Take one more step, cadet. See what happens. SSG Elijah Brooks's words cut the wind as sharp as the marble line beneath his boots. The sun flashed on the blackened rifle at his shoulder. His face was stone, jaw flexing, not an eyelash moving. The rope shuddered under a dozen young hands. The West Point cadets pressed forward, but only one, Cadet Marcus King, had the nerve to smirk, eyes glittering. King's hand hovered at his hip, toy pistol tucked at the seam of his immaculate trousers, a challenge in every muscle. Tourists fell silent. The air stilled, heavy with anticipation and the scent of cold gun oil and grass. Flags snapped above. The tomb of the unknown loomed, white, unyielding, indifferent to living and dead alike. If you've ever wondered what happens when respect meets arrogance, you're about to see why some lines at Arlington are never crossed. If this story grips you already, subscribe now. This is just the first step. "Come on, King, don't," another cadet hissed, but King's grin widened. He drew the ceremonial pistol, bright chrome, and cocked it with a flourish, raising it toward the tomb guard. Brooks didn't blink. He took a single step forward, boots ringing on marble. The crowd's breath caught, as if the entire plaza had shrunk to the space between soldier and challenger. A legend isn't born in comfort. It's forged in a moment just like this, where sun, shadow, and silence all wait for someone to flinch. At Brooks's side, Specialist Victor Mendoza tensed, jaw set. Lane, the youngest, shifted his weight, fingers worrying the velvet rope, eyes darting to Brooks for a sign. King's voice, loud and careless, "Relax, Sergeant, we're all soldiers here." Brooks, "Soldiers don't point guns at the dead." The wind surged, snapping the flag, making white gloves flutter at Brooks's side. Mendoza's step echoed. He was ready to move. Lane's knuckles whitened, rope biting his palms. King scoffed. "It's a prop. Lighten up." Brooks's eyes never left him. "Does a memory bleed, cadet?" Tourists pressed closer, camera phones forgotten. CPT Renee Dalton, sharp-eyed, moved along the line, voice clipped. "Cadet King, stand down. This isn't a game." But King, too far gone, raised the pistol chest high. Brooks stepped closer, close enough for King to see his reflection in the guard's sunglasses. A soldier, unblinking, unbreakable. Somewhere a small child whimpered. The wind bit through the plaza, bringing the bracing chill of autumn even under the harsh sun. King's hand trembled, just for a heartbeat. Brooks's shadow stretched long across the marble, swallowing King's shoes. Mendoza's voice low. "Brooks? Orders?" Brooks, never shifting. "Hold the line." Lane's chest heaved, a single drop of sweat tracing his cheek. The crowd's silence felt like pressure, a weight suffocating, absolute. "Put it down, King," Dalton snapped, voice raw now. But King's pride was a fuse. He stared Brooks down, pistol never wavering. "You think you scare me?" Brooks's voice cold as marble. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here so nobody forgets." For a single immortal instant, the entire cemetery seemed to watch. Brooks's face lit by the morning sun, the tomb behind him, eternal. King, caught between bravado and realization. And then, King's finger tightened on the fake trigger. The world held its breath. Some say Arlington is haunted by memories, but it's the living who keep the silence, and sometimes you hear it break. "Drop the weapon, cadet. Last warning." Brooks's voice was low, almost gentle, but it carried like thunder over the marble. The fake pistol hovered, unsteady now, in King's grip. For a moment, no one moved. Not the crowd pressed against the velvet rope, not the other cadets, frozen, wide-eyed, each one rethinking every bravado story they'd ever told. Wind rattled the flags overhead. Brooks stood motionless, shoulders square, boots planted as if he'd grown from the stone itself. His gaze never wavered. At his flank, Mendoza scanned the line, one wrong twitch from the cadets, and he'd be there. Lane, pulse jumping in his throat, kept his eyes on King, but his hand crept unconsciously toward his own rifle. The weight of ritual and expectation pressed on him, heavier than the air. A cough from the crowd shattered the hush. Dalton, uniform sharp even as a guest, stepped forward. "Cadet King, this ends now. Hand it over." Her words were clipped, steel overlaid with urgency. But King's pride was bruised, and in his eyes flickered the last heat of defiance. His lips curled, almost a sneer. "All this over a plastic gun?" Brooks's reply was a whisper, meant only for King, but the whole crowd seemed to lean in. Here, it's never plastic. Every act counts. A moment passed, heavy as thunderclouds. The world seemed to narrow to King, Brooks, and the gun. King hesitated, sweat beaded his brow. The sound of his breathing, shallow and ragged, fought the wind for dominance. Mendoza's jaw clenched, knuckles whitening on his rifle. Lane bit his cheek, jaw trembling. King's hand shook, the prop pistol wavering. Then, abruptly, he thrust it toward Dalton, grip first. Dalton snatched it away, her face unreadable. A ripple spread through the crowd. Relief, but not release. King's chest heaved. "See? Not real," he spat, but there was no laughter now, just the stark, echoing quiet of a lesson unlearned. Brooks finally blinked. He took one measured step forward, face inches from King's. "The dead don't care if your weapon is real. Only the living disrespect their memory." The words hung in the air. King's shoulders squared as if ready to meet another challenge. "You guard stones and ghosts. I want to lead real men." Lane's head snapped up at that, anger brightening his eyes. Mendoza's boots scuffed the stone, a warning. Brooks's lips thinned. "You want to lead? Start by learning respect." Dalton's voice suddenly closer, voice tight with authority. "Cadets, fall back, now!" But King didn't move, not yet. His eyes blazing stayed fixed on Brooks. The wind gusted. Brooks's badge glinted. Lane, barely breathing, watched the dance of power, honor, and ego play out not a foot from the tomb. Suddenly, King's fist clenched. "Maybe Arlington's just for the dead, Sergeant. Some of us have a future." Brooks's reply was a single word. "Earn it." Sound returned in a rush, boots shifting, tourists exhaling, the rope line swaying as the cadets finally stepped back, Dalton corralling them with clipped commands. Mendoza let his shoulders drop just a fraction, jaw unclenching. Lane's hand retreated from his rifle, sweat cooling on his brow. But as Dalton turned to lead her cadets away, King glanced back. His stare locked on Brooks, pride and resentment warring beneath the surface. Brooks didn't flinch, his voice, now for all to hear. "The line between honor and arrogance is thin, cadet. Cross it once, you never come back the same." The crowd, held in the gravity of that truth, stood silent. The air was charged, every breath a spark. Lane's eyes found Brooks's, searching for reassurance. Brooks's final words quiet as a prayer. "This line will not break, not for you, not for anyone." King paused, his silhouette outlined against the white stone, as if reconsidering everything he thought he knew. And then a siren wailed in the far distance, sharp, shrill, like a warning carried on the wind. Mendoza's head snapped up, Brooks's body tensed. Every guard was alert again. The threat wasn't over. The line still held, but something in the air had shifted. "Don't even twitch," Mendoza hissed, voice so low only Lane heard. But Lane's muscles were coiled, eyes darting from the retreating cadets to Brooks, whose silhouette cut a perfect line against the tomb. Across the plaza, the distant siren rose and fell, uncertainty rippling through the crowd. Tourists looked around, faces pale in the hard sunlight. Dalton's hand tightened around the fake pistol she'd confiscated, knuckles white as marble. King trailed at the rear of the cadet group, but his eyes never left Brooks. Then, suddenly, a ripple, a sharp metallic clatter as King's boot caught a bronze marker. The crowd startled. Lane's heart hammered. Mendoza moved half a step forward, a warning and a shield at once. Brooks called out, voice slicing through the rising tension. "Step back from the line." King squared his shoulders, jaw set. "You think standing still makes you a soldier?" The accusation hung in the air, hot and electric. Brooks's face never changed. A real soldier stands between chaos and peace every second. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the wind flaring up, slamming the flags flat, flinging grit and dust. Lane blinked grit. From his eyes, the sting a sharp reminder. Stay present, stay sharp. The marble beneath his boots felt slick and cold. Sweat prickled at his collar. Dalton's voice cracked through the tension. "Cadets, form up, now!" But King stood firm. "We train to act, not to freeze." Brooks took a single, deliberate step. His boots rang, echoing across the plaza. The onlookers collectively leaned back, a tide of bodies recoiling from the heat between the two men. Lane's breath came shallow, adrenaline fizzing under his skin. Mendoza's hand hovered close to his rifle sling, muscles taut, ready to block, to intercept. "Sometimes," Brooks said, voice soft and lethal, "restraint is the hardest order to follow. Out here, that's the line. You cross it, you answer for it." King's mouth twisted, defiance still burning. If a threat came, would you move, or just hold your pose for the dead? Brooks stared him down. "You think this is a pose? The last man I guarded out here came home in a box. I stood for him. I'll stand for you too if you fall. That's what a real soldier does." Dalton moved to intervene, but King shot her a glare, fists balled. The other cadets shifted nervously, cowed by the exchange. The crowd's murmurs swelled, camera phones raised, the tension now spectacle. Lane's mind reeled. In training, everything was clear. Here, every second felt razor-thin, real stakes beneath the ceremony. Brooks never wavered. "You want to be a leader? Show them respect. Show them the line you'll never cross." King's chest heaved. "And if I refuse," Brooks, unmoving, "then you'll learn the hardest way, when your turn comes and you have no choice but to stand." The air vibrated with the threat and promise in those words. A gust slammed into the plaza, papers fluttered, tourists ducked, a wreath at the base of the tomb threatened to topple. Mendoza reached out, steadying it in one swift motion, not missing a beat. Brooks locked eyes with Lane. The message was silent, unmistakable. Hold, endure, don't give in to fear or anger. Then, as if in answer, King spat on the marble. The sound, shockingly loud, ricocheted through the silence. Lane gasped. Mendoza stepped forward, rage barely checked. Brooks's voice was ice. "You've done enough, cadet. Leave the plaza." Dalton grabbed King's arm, dragging him back into the group. The other cadets followed, faces shadowed by shame and awe. King's head snapped back, meeting Brooks's gaze. One last flare of wounded pride, but something else too. Confusion, uncertainty. Brooks and his team resumed their post, boots crisp against the marble, eyes fixed ahead, even as the crowd buzzed with disbelief. But the lesson was far from over. Somewhere, beyond the plaza, another siren sounded, closer this time. The threat hadn't passed. Lane's chest rose and fell, a silent prayer caught in his throat. This line, he realized, was more than stone. It was blood, sweat, memory, sacred, unbreakable. And tonight, it would be tested again. "You dishonored the dead today, cadet. That stays with you." Brooks's words cut through the lingering silence as the sun crawled west, casting long, grave shadows over the plaza. Most tourists had drifted away, unsettled, whispering among themselves. But the guards remained, their discipline undimmed. Lane and Mendoza flanked Brooks, posture still sharp despite the churn of adrenaline beneath their uniforms. King lingered near the edge, separated from his squad, anger cooling into something heavier. Dalton stood with him, the confiscated pistol at her side, her jaw set in hard disappointment. The air hung thick with a mix of grass, stone, and distant pine, the sense of autumn evening settling over Arlington. The marble was cool and slick beneath the guard's feet, the rope line rough where Lane gripped it, knuckles gone white. Dalton's voice was flat. "Report, Cadet King. Now." King glared at the ground. "Ma'am, I let my pride talk. I forgot where I was." His voice was low, tight, but every syllable sounded like gravel. Dalton didn't flinch. "You forgot who you were standing for. That matters here more than anywhere." A bugle sounded faintly across the grounds, a mournful echo. Lane swallowed hard, skin prickling at the familiar somber melody. Brooks's face remained impassive, but his eyes followed King, searching, measuring. Mendoza spoke, tone softer than before. "Everyone comes here thinking they know sacrifice, until they stand at the line, until they feel the weight." King shifted, shame creeping across his face. He glanced at the tomb, the gold inscription blazing in the last light. "Here rests in honored glory." Brooks stepped forward, voice low but ringing with conviction. "You asked if I would move for a real threat. I would. I have. But here the threat isn't an enemy. It's forgetting what this place means. That's the line we guard." The wind curled around the plaza, fluttering Lane's uniform, raising goosebumps along his arms. Every sound, gravel crunching, flag halyard snapping, a distant crow, seemed sharper now. Dalton placed the pistol on the stone and faced King. "Pick it up. Walk it to the sergeant. Own your mistake." King hesitated, then bent to retrieve the toy pistol. The metal felt cold, heavier than it should in his palm. His steps echoed across the emptying plaza. He stopped before Brooks, shoulders square but eyes uncertain. "I'm sorry. For all of it." Brooks's hand closed over the pistol, grip strong, unwavering. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to them." He nodded toward the tomb. King turned, hat in hand, and faced the marble, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I get it now. I swear I do." A hush settled. Even the breeze stilled for a moment. Lane felt a weight lift from his chest. Mendoza exhaled slow, controlled. Brooks finally spoke, softer now. "Every guard here has lost someone, friend, brother, sometimes part of ourselves. We stand for all those stories, not just for show." King nodded, swallowing hard, pride replaced by a deeper humility. Dalton rested a hand on his shoulder. The flag snapped overhead, one last defiant salute to the sun. Shadows crawled across the names etched in stone. The day's lesson burned into every witness. Brooks's voice echoed as the light faded. "You dishonor them once, it scars you. But you earn respect. You carry them forward." King didn't look away from the tomb. "I'll remember. Always." A single bugle note soared above the silence. The sun dropped behind the trees, darkness creeping across the marble, across the line that would never move. And just as quiet reclaimed the plaza, the distant crackle of a radio, trouble brewing elsewhere, a reminder, duty never ends. The sun was gone, leaving Arlington bathed in the golden hush of twilight. Flags hung heavy at half-staff, breeze gentling the plaza into a sacred stillness. The tourists were gone now. Only the guards, Dalton and King, remained, silhouetted against the endless rows of headstones fading into dusk. Brooks stood at attention, rifle gleaming, gaze unwavering. Lane and Mendoza flanked him, uniforms immaculate, faces carved from the same silent reverence as the tomb itself. Dalton watched from a respectful distance, arms folded, the weight of the day settling into the lines around her eyes. King lingered by the steps, alone in the hush, his earlier arrogance stripped away by the gravity of all he'd witnessed. He glanced at his fellow cadets, at Dalton, at the sacred marble, then drew a long, shuddering breath and approached the line. His footsteps echoed, each one a test of resolve. He stopped just short of Brooks, the tomb's shadow stretched long between them. King's voice broke the silence, quiet but clear. "Permission to speak, Sergeant." Brooks nodded once, rifle never wavering. King's hands trembled as he removed his cap. "I came here thinking this was a test, just another box to check on my way up. But I was wrong." He swallowed, searching for words that didn't come easy. "You stand for them. So the rest of us remember who we are, and what it costs to forget." The words landed heavy, honest. Lane blinked back, a sudden sting in his eyes. Mendoza exhaled, shoulders easing, the tension of the day dissolving into dusk. Brooks's reply was gentle but iron cord. "We all forget once. Some of us get a second chance. The fallen do not." King looked down, voice trembling. "I dishonored you. And them. I can't take that back, but I won't cross that line again." Brooks took a slow step forward, hand outstretched, not for his rifle, but for King's hand. The two clasped palms, grip firm, unyielding. For a moment, past and present, sacrifice and memory, were joined across that line. Brooks's voice carried, "Never point a gun at a memory. Never test a line you're not ready to hold." Dalton's voice, soft, approving. "That's a lesson you'll carry into every command, cadet." King straightened, pride tempered by something truer. He looked to Lane and Mendoza, who nodded back, respect now freely given. Above, the flag whispered against the dusk, shadow rippling over marble. The last notes of a bugle sounded faint, far off, eternal. The line was not just defended, it was honored, and a lesson as old as the soil passed from one guard to the next. The guards resumed their vigil, the plaza returning to sacred silence. King lingered for a final moment, gaze lingering on the tomb, then stepped back, crossing the rope, no longer an intruder, but a witness changed. As the darkness deepened, Brooks's words echoed in every heart. The watch never ends. If this story moved you, subscribe now. Some lines are never meant to be crossed, some stories never forgotten.